Hello, Lucy and Conrad and Caleb. Papa and Spider-Man are back to tell you another story. The last story we told y'all was about the origin of Wasp, when Janet Van Dyne became Henry Pym's sidekick and powerful super heroine. And now we're going to talk about how Henry Pym went from Ant-Man to Giant Man. All right, so let's look at that story, okay? This is the story of Ant-Man and the Wasp, starring in the birth of Giant Man. Look, here's a photo of Henry Pym's house, and look, Giant Man is bursting out of it, and he's scaring the neighbor to death. This is, we're hearing an ear-splitting explosion that rocks a quiet house on the New Jersey Palisades overlooking the Hudson River. And then a gigantic form emerges. The neighbor says, "What in the name of creation is that?" And Giant Man says, "Just made it another minute and I'd have been crushed uh, inside those walls." So he barely got out in time before he was crushed just by his own size. And the neighbor says, "It isn't possible. I must be going mad. It's a giant, a huge costume giant." And the hand reaches out and says, "Please don't be afraid. I won't hurt you. I need help." The man runs off. He says, "The police. I've got to get the police." And Giant Man hollers out, "Come back. Wait." Hmm. Well, then Janet Van Dyne shows up. I'm going to have to get over here where I can read this. Uh, Henry Pym says, "Jan, my experiment backfired. I must have taken too big a dose of the new enlarging fluid." He said, "I'm still growing. Quickly drop a reducing pellet in my mouth." And Jan says, "I heard the explosion. Luckily, I was nearby. I saw the gardener running down the road in panic and guessed what must have happened. Here, swallow this right away. I always said you had a big head, but this is ridiculous." All right, so Jan manages to find a shrinking capsule to give to Henry Pym so he can reduce his size. All right, within seconds, the astonishing chemical begins to work. Henry Pym says, "I learned an important lesson, Jan. When I was giant-sized, I was almost too weak to move. I must never allow myself to grow taller than 12 feet. Any more than that, and I become too big to support my own weight." Jan says, "As far as I'm concerned, Henry Pym, I like you just the way you are. You're a perfect hug size now." Henry says, "Be serious, Jan. This is no time for that kind of talk." Jan says, "You big unromantic dreamboat. I am serious." Henry says, "Look, kid, I've worked for weeks to put our growth and shrinking vapors in capsule form. I've even designed this new uniform to wear when I get larger than life size. But the job isn't finished. I've got to perfect them." Jan says, "Why couldn't I have fallen in love with a nice simple butcher or baker?" But of course, as I remember, she wanted adventure. "Honey, you're just in love with the idea of being in love. Now button those rosy lips until we finish this job." She says, "Even when you call me honey, you make it sound medicinal." Finally, after hours of painstaking work, Pym says, now if we estimated everything correctly, swallowing this capsule should increase my height to exactly 12 feet. Look, there he is at the 6-foot mark. And Jan says, I feel like the innocent assistant to a mad scientist in an old-time horror movie. So he takes the capsule. One microsecond later, he shoots up to 12 feet. He says, hi, Shorty, it worked perfectly. And Jan says, congratulations, big man. All right, so this is the birth of Giant Man. And so now Henry Pym can be small as an ant or as big as a giant. And now he'll have much different kinds of adventures. Let's see what the next adventure is about. The next adventure is Giant Man and the Wonderful Wasp battle the unbeatable human top. Look at this fella. He can spin round and round so fast he can't be caught. And he's going to rob stores and banks, and he's a bad guy. Look, here's another picture of Giant Man and the Wasp battling the human top. And he's so fast he can even fly. The narrator says, let's face it, Giant Man seems to have taken comic fandom by storm. Excitement fills the air at the Marvel bullpen, but we won't rest on our laurels. We feel like this, the newest Giant Man tale, will set a standard for years to come. All right, this is going to be the beginning of the human top when he's very young. The narrator says, in every century, some humans are born with fantastic talents. One prime example is Dave Cannon, whose amazing ability to whirl around at great speed is the basis for our astonishing tale. One of his friends says, wowie, nobody can do what Davy can. Another kid says, yeah, too bad a guy with his talent has to be such a rotten bully. Well, then Davy stops spinning and he grabs the guy. Thought I couldn't hear you while I was spinning around, huh? Just for that, I'm charging you double for the show. Look, he grabs him and he doubles up his fist. Alas, unfortunately for the neighborhood kids and for the world at large, fate had not seen fit to bestow a rare gift on one who was not deserving of it. And so Davy goes speeding through the streets and steals stuff. The fruit vendor says, get him, he swiped my fruit. But the policeman can't catch him. Davy says, no one can catch me. But although he achieved incredible speed by whirling like a top, Dave Cannon was still young and no match for the forces of the law. So look, they've got a net spread out for him. The policeman says, we were ready for you this time, son. The top says, okay, you win, I'll pay for the fruit. As the years rolled by, Dave Cannon used his superhuman spinning ability in every way he could. He became a circus performer, professional wrestler, and then he found a more lucrative source of income as a skater. So look, they're all out there ready to race, and the timer says, get set, go! Bam! And one skater says, hey, what gives? Look at that guy Cannon move. Nobody can skate that fast. Another fellow says he came in last during all the other races just to bring the betting odds up. And Davy says, the betting scandal will pay me a real bundle for this caper. After the race, the mobster says, nice work, Cannon. Here's your cut. Now you better leave town before they start investigating you. Cannon says, what for? I'm not scared of anything. The other mobster says, suit yourself, Sonny, but remember, good as you are, the cops are a lot better. Cannon thinks, good as I am, huh? The fools have no idea how good I really am. Well, I realize now that I don't need them anymore. I don't need anyone. I've got the talent to do whatever I want to do alone. And unfortunately for the good of mankind, the things Dave Cannon wanted to do with his great talent were these. Look at all these newspaper headlines. Burglar spins way to freedom. Spinning criminal in new fantastic robbery. Police dragnet fails to stop the spinning robber. Whirling felon strikes again. The entire city followed Cannon's crime career with interest, including Henry Pym. He's reading the newspaper. The newspaper says Human Top named as public enemy #1. And Pym says, Human Top, huh? Wonder who he really is. Just a cheap crook. No need for Giant Man to tackle him. But even Henry Pym doesn't realize how dangerous the Human Top will be as he makes a routine call. He says, Hello, Jan. Just want to remind you we have a briefing session in an hour. And there she is on the phone. She says, Remind me, silly boy, I've been at the beauty parlor all day preparing for the event. Henry Pym says, For Pete's sake, girl, how many times must I tell you? Our meetings are strictly business. You don't have to get prettied up first. But Jan thinks, oh, don't I? If he thinks I became the Wasp because I like to change criminals, he's mad. He may go for all the adventure jazz, but I go for big, wonderful, dreamy him. Poor Henry Pym. He's got stuck with a lovesick partner. As she heads to see Henry, she says, if only Hank could see me as a girl instead of a costumed crime fighter. The fellow's looking at her and she says, what's he looking at? Oh my gosh, I forgot to shrink to wasp size. I'd better take my reducing capsule now before his eyes bug right out of his head. Well, his eyes are really about to bug out because she turns into a wasp and disappears. And the elevator operator says, is something wrong, sir? The fellow says, oh, this is no time for questions. Where's the nearest eye doctor? And so Wasp flies through the window and she says, here I am, handsome. Where is the brass band? And you'd better notice the new perfume I'm wearing. And then she thinks, darn, I just remembered. He can hardly hear me when I'm wasp-sized. Time for my enlarging capsule again. I'm beginning to feel like an elevator. Then she says, have no fear, Dreamboat. The Wasp is here. Henry says, just in time, Jan. I was just about to become Giant Man. She says, when are you going to realize that those silly size pills are no substitute for moonlight and roses? He says, as soon as you realize there's a time and place for everything, young lady. And so he becomes Giant Man, and he's 12 feet tall. Jan says, oh, so you do know that I'm a young lady. Well, then things aren't completely hopeless. You'll have to talk louder, Shorty. You know, Scatterbrain, you are kind of cute at that, for a midget that is. And look, he picks her up and stands her on his hand. She says, Henry Pym, you put me down this minute. You show off you. He says, hold it, kid. A message is coming through from the ants on our thought wave communicator. Let's see if we can interpret it. So the ants are projecting images. And Jan says, if only those silly ants could speak, you wouldn't have to try reading their thoughts. Quiet, Jan. Look, a spinning top with human features. The city's largest department store with an accent on money. Now I get it. Somehow one of our snooper ants sensed the human top, planning to rob Danley's tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. See the clock? But why would they notify me of such a routine crime? She says, I think I like you better as Ant-Man. Since you became giant size, you think you're too good for anyone or anything. Giant Man says, maybe you're right, Jan. Wait, I'll get back to normal and we'll talk it over. If I seem to be getting too swell-headed, I'm sorry, honey, and I'm grateful to you for bringing me back to Earth. She says, you may be back to Earth, but when you call me honey like that, I'm on cloud 9. Meanwhile, Dave Cannon rehearses for the opening of the new ice show with no one suspecting that he is the notorious Human Top. He says, I mustn't spin too fast. Don't want anyone putting 2 and 2 together and guessing my little secret. And so he's still ice skating for real, and he's out there on the ice skating rink. The director says, all right, Cannon, you look pretty sharp there. You can knock off till next rehearsal. And he thinks, I sure will. I'll knock off Danley's department store. And so he skates off. Early the next morning at his lavish midtown apartment, he says, I can't afford an expensive pad like this on an ice skater's crummy salary, but luckily I have another more unusual source of income. And look, he's got his costume on. And again, it's green, all right? Green costume, green a helmet that looks like a top. Says it's almost time for the payroll to be delivered to Danley's, but this time the Human Top will be on hand to help them with his own little profit-sharing plan. And on Danley's main floor, a new sales clerk goes through his paces. So look, it's Henry Pym, and he's taken a job at Danley's. He thinks when the Human Top shows up, the Wasp and I will be ready for him. And then at the entrance to the sprawling store, here come the security guards with bags of money. One of them says, hurry it up, Sam. I've got a date tonight. Sam says, relax. We'll be out of here in no time. The other fella says, that's right. No one's going to mess around with 3 armed payroll guards. Oh yeah, looks like the Top is going to mess with it. One of them says, holy cow, what's that? The other one says, it's the Human Top. And the Top says, that payroll bag looks awfully heavy for you 3 guys. Let me give you a hand with it. Or should I say a foot? And so he spins in and he turns on his head and he grabs the bag with his feet. And then he goes bounding around all over the store. And a woman says, help! The store is haunted. The Top says, really? Then I'd better get out of here fast. I'm terrified of ghosts. And now Henry Pym has changed into his costume. And he says, so that's the big bad Human Top. Well, I've tackled lots worse than him in my time. The salesman says, somebody do something. And so here comes Giant Man. He says, I hear you talking, so step aside, little friend. And the salesman says, yipe, and to think I became a floor walker because I thought it was a nice, quiet, safe occupation. And then he says, oh no, still another one. It's like contest time at the Mardi Gras. What does he know about Mardi Gras in New York? Mardi Gras takes place in New Orleans. But here comes the Wasp. She's flying around. She says, wait for me, lover boy. And then the Top notices. He thinks, well, it seems that I've got company. Giant Man and the Wasp. I've heard of them, but I'll make them wish they had never heard of me. Outside in the street, the Top is spinning around all the cars. And Giant Man says, stay back. The Wasp says, Giant Man, look out for the traffic. But the Top says, ha, your huge, ungainly size is nothing but a handicap to you. And it's true. The Giant Man is so big he can't get out of the way. The driver says, hey, watch where you're going, Mac. The other one says, yeah, get back to the freak show where you belong. Wasp says, careful, you'll cause a traffic accident if you don't watch out. And then she says, I'm no help to him this way. I've got to shrink to Wasp size. So she shrinks down. The top says, if I can beat Giant Man, I can beat anybody, and he hasn't a chance against me. Wasp says, I've got to help Hank catch him. Wait, I can contact his loyal ants through my special helmet. It's worth a try. I wonder what the ants can do. Let's see. And so a few seconds later, here come the ants. And the wasp says, attention little friends, you must quickly chew through the pavement, softening it. The Ant-Man commands. And so the top decides to stand right there. He says, I'll rest here for a while and taunt Giant Man. And then he starts spinning around. He says, well, looky here, you finally caught up to me. Now I know your strategy. You're waiting for me to die of old age. Giant Man says, I'll get you yet, little man. And the top says, some joke. You couldn't even catch a cold. In fact, hey, what happened to this pavement? I've lost my balance. See what the ants have done? They've weakened the pavement enough that it's starting to collapse. And Giant Man says, what's the matter, big brain? You never suspected that enough obedient ants could soften a concrete sidewalk's crust. Obedient ants, the top says. Next you'll be saying you've got gremlins working for you too. He says, bah, I'll still be gone before you can reach me. And notice the top still has his hands on those money bags. And so he spins away. Giant Man says, guess again, loudmouth, I've got you now. Yow! Oh, Giant Man runs right into the light pole while the Human Torch just spins away. He says, smatter, big brain. You never suspected that a guy who can spin as fast as I can also roll out of danger just as fast. So Giant Man gets up and runs again. I'll get you if it's the last. Ow! And he runs face on into a big sign. Oh my word. He's so big, he can hardly maneuver. And maneuver is all that the top can do, and he's just spinning right away. And then the top stops and he says, aren't you embarrassed, you clumsy ape? You're making a fool of yourself in front of the whole city. Giant Man thinks, he's right. If I don't get him, I'll be a laughingstock. I've got to try again. And so then the top spins over a fence, but Giant Man has to run through the fence. And someone says, holy smoke, I can stand howling alley cats or noisy garbage collectors, but this is too much. The top says, you're a one-man wrecking crew, big boy. The repairmen's union will love you for this, because look, he's tearing up the fence, and someone's going to have to fix it. And so they keep running through the street, and there's a subway station. And Giant Man says, I'll get you sooner or later. And when I do, Top says, you'll probably let me slip through your clumsy fingers while you stop to make another corny speech. Wasp is thinking he's heading for the subway. Giant Man can't follow him there, but the Wasp can. And so the top just spins away, and Giant Man says, it's too tight a squeeze. I can't make it. And the top says, don't quit so soon, Stretch. Come on, I'll lend you a token if you're broke. And this bystander says, oh, from now on, I ride the bus. Giant Man says, I can't let him get away. I'll reduce to normal size and keep after him. And the Wasp is flying around and says, I'll try to see where he goes, Hank. Don't be long. I hate being alone with strange men. But she says, it's no use. He's too fast. It's like chasing a Corvette on a pair of roller skates. Seconds later, after Giant Man has resumed normal size, they're in the dark. And Henry Pym says, he beat us as though we were a couple of amateurs, Jan. Jan says, where do you get that us from? This was your show, partner. Looks like I just tagged along for the ride. So the next morning, a highly satisfied Dave Cannon gloats as he reads the headlines. It says, Giant Man defeated by Human Top in dramatic chase. Cannon says, not bad for a beginner. I made all the front pages. And the beauty of it is that the public will end up sympathizing with me because I'm the little guy. No one likes a big fella to win a fight. But I better not kid myself. Giant Man isn't the type to give up. He'll hound me forever. And even a genius like me can make a mistake sometime. That'll be all he needs to pounce on me. There's only one way for me to be really safe. I've got to get him before he can get me. I've got to finish him for good. Meanwhile, a determined Henry Pym has some plans of his own. And here comes Jan. Hi, handsome. Why the mad scientist bit? Henry says, I've decided the only way to beat the Human Top is for me to increase my own speed and my reflexes. So I've rigged up some apparatuses to help me do that little thing. So look, there's a ball bouncing around the room. He says, like this bouncing ball exercise, it keeps going faster and faster. The more I work at it, the closer I come to catching it. So he's trying to move quickly to imitate the need for speed to catch the top. Come on. Now, this is the most important device of all, an electronic gyrotop operated by remote control. Jan says, for heaven's sake, are you sure you haven't been reading too many adventures of Mr. Fantastic? Never mind the humor, little one. Here, I'll show you how to operate the gyrotop. She says, I should have known you didn't invite me because the moon was full and you wanted to whisper sweet nothings. Okay, tall, dark, and disappointing, brief me. He says, this is a chemical energizer I've developed. It will increase my speed as well as my size when I become Giant Man to help me keep pace with the top. As soon as I drink this, release the gyrotop and then stand back. Jan sets it off and she says, there. Oh, I never dreamed it would be so fast. That's the purpose of it, kid. It's the only way I'll train myself to outspeed the Human Top. It'll try to outguess me, make it change direction suddenly. Jan says, he can't realize it himself, but I can tell from here he's not nearly fast enough. It's hopeless. He'll never be able to beat the Human Top. But Giant Man keeps practicing. He says, I've got to keep at it. I must learn to match his speed to be able to twist and dart as easily as he. Then he grabs it. He says, ha, I got it. I got it. If I could catch my gyrotop, I ought to be able to catch the human one. But no, look. Before Giant Man can tighten his grip, he says, it's spun out of my fingers. It whirls too fast. It's too slippery. I'm still not good enough for it. I almost had it. I feel my speed increasing. I need just a more few weeks of intensive training. But Jan thinks, I haven't the heart to tell him. I only had the gyrotop operating at half speed. As for the few weeks he says he needs, what if the Human Top strikes before then? And just at that time, we see the sinister form of the Top spinning through the darkened streets, about to menace mankind again. And look, he's got a bomb. All right, but this tale is too big, too filled with surprises yet to come, to squeeze into one issue. And so the final half will appear next issue as Giant Man and the Human Top fight to the finish. All right, so that's all of our story today. the giant man has found a new super foe, the human top. Will he be able to catch him when we come back and read the rest of the adventure later? All right, kids, bye-bye for now.